Okay, good evening, everyone. I am calling this meeting of the Planning and Zoning the Planning and Zoning Commission Committee on Subdivision Regulations to order. It is Wednesday, April 5th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Start with a roll call. Mr. Blackmer.
Present.
Mr. Poplawski.
If Poplawski present.
Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill.
Mr. Williams.
Ray Williams, present.
Ms. Salsi.
Jane Salsi present.
Joseph Brody Brown. Excuse me. Am I the only one with a horrible echo?
No, but I think
going
it's
through
Joe.
all of them.
Why is that echo there?
I think it's Joe. It's gone now. He just muted and it's gone. At least I don't hear it.
Same
Yeah,
here.
Sorry about that. I don't know. Is it better now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, you're good.
perfect. And Mr. Rice is present. Hello, Mr. Rice.
Good evening.
Okay, so if Thierry, you want to go ahead and share the memo?
Yeah, but just briefly for the record of the minutes, it is not a meeting of the subcommittee. It is a special meeting of the commission, because if it's a subcommittee, you can't vote to take action. So it's
Sorry,
posted.
that's right. Yeah. Thank you for that correction, Tira.
All right, so let me pull it up here. You guys can all see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just go through in order to acknowledge the changes. If we need to stop for further discussion, let me know. But because, it's a pretty finite list, I think we can touch even on sort of smaller ones like the first one. And as usual, they are in order of how they appear in the draft. So Article 2 definitions, the current definition for Board of Selectmen is the governing body of the town of Thompson, Connecticut. That is actually technically incorrect. The governing body is the town meeting. So if we're going to keep the definition, it would just be to identify that it's the Board of Selectmen of Thompson, not any other Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen is the Board of Selectmen of the town of Thompson, Connecticut. All in agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Can I interrupt here for a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
John Leakey's not gonna be here tonight.
Is not going to be here?
No,
Got that?
no. Echo.
Echo.
Wow. Okay.
It's the echo started again, Cindy, when you came in. So maybe mute yourself. Yeah. And it just went away. So whoever just muted themselves took that effect away. So good. But obviously anybody unmute themselves when they need to speak. Okay. Owners Association is the next definition that change is suggested. As currently in the draft, and this was largely based on Marla's input, it reads, an organization legally formed for the purpose of managing all shared or common elements of a property pursuant to the Connecticut Common Interest Ownership Act, sections 47-200 through 49-299 of the Connecticut General Statutes, or the Condominium Act of 1976, sections 47-68A through 47-90G of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended. Residential subdivisions commonly use the term homeowners association or HOA. Rich has suggested the following replacement: a formally constituted nonprofit association or corporation made up of the property owners and or residents of a fixed area, which is responsible through the sharing of costs for owning, maintaining, and overseeing a common road, facility, and or structure, common areas, and open space.
I like that much better.
Well, I like anything that our attorney would have suggested better than anything anybody else would have suggested for something like that. Does anybody else have any observations there?
I agree with Alvin. I like it.
It's simplified and much clearer.
Okay, so that's,
Tara, John Rice, Rich Roberts, he said, how many condos existed prior to 76? I don't know where the echo's coming from, but, how about that Thompson Hills condo?
so they do exist. Actually, Alvin pulled the property card. Those were constructed in 1986, but they're also not a subdivision. So it's kind of not
Okay, all right,
relevant to this
all
to
right,
this
move on.
exercise. Yep. Definition of person, and just as, and I think we've already covered this, but since it's in the memo, we'll just briefly touch on it. Based on Marla's request that we include the broad definition of person and the commission's prior choice to delete it because it was so broad as to be useless. I asked Attorney Roberts to comment. And his comment is, as long as the context where the word appears in the text clearly is meant to include entities as well as individuals, it is fine to leave it out. The alternative is to define it even more broadly so that you don't inadvertently omit some form of corporate or other entity. So based on that, which to my eye, essentially reinforces what we had already decided, I am saying, look, we don't need person in the glossary. Agreed?
Yes,
Agreed.
Yes.
agreed.
And there it goes. Okay, so the next one is a slight change to the definition of private street, which currently reads a traveled way serving more than 3 privately owned properties that 1 was created by the recording of a subdivision in the Thompson land records predating February 3rd, 1969. Rich correctly pointed out that since February 3rd, 1969 is when subdivision regulations were adopted, there is no legal thing known as a subdivision that predates that. So the alternate language is private street, a traveled way serving more than 3 privately owned properties that 1 was shown on a map or plan filed in the Thompson land records prior to the adoption by the town of the first edition of the subdivision regulations on February 3rd, 1969, and then etc. So that just makes it more factually correct.
I like that.
Yes.
All right, so this is,
Yes.
okay. Doop. And away it goes. Structure, I won't read the whole thing because it's, Rich just called out as odd the inclusion of vending machines, which are not fixed to the ground. So why are we calling them structures? I think that was a carryover, not only from our zoning regulations update, but that definition was a carryover from the 2012 and just nobody really focused on it. So I'm just suggesting we cut it here. And when we do the next update to the zoning regulations, we cut it there as well.
But what do we do if somebody wants a vending machine?
Well, it can be moved. I mean, it's not a structure.
Well, it can be attached to the ground. Most of them that are in a city is attached to the sidewalk.
Well, I leave it to the commission then. We can leave it in or take it out.
Well, I would take it out, but if we should, in the zoning, think about it.
Well, I
would you-
guess, I guess this would be my actual response then. These things are not exhaustive, this list of things that might be structures. I think the point is if it's affixed to the ground, we're calling it a structure. So those are examples, not all of the things that could be.
Exactly.
I agree with Rich, strike the vending machines and Alvin. Don't strike Alvin. I agree with Alvin. Sorry. Sorry, Alvin, we're not gonna have Tira hit you.
Man, I was just gonna vote on that too.
I was wearing my my tough girl shoes yesterday. All right, away she goes. Zoning enforcement officer is the last definition that Rich specifically called out needed just a slight adjustment, which is to add this last line. Currently reads zoning enforcement officer, ZEO, the individual employed by the town who is appointed by a majority vote of the commission to carry out the functions and purposes identified in these regulations. That should be a capital R. Until such time as the appointment is revoked by the majority vote of the commission or such officer otherwise ceases to be employed by the town, which is just making it more correct. I assume there are no objections there.
I agree with Attorney Roberts.
Okay. Moving on, Article 3, application procedures and commission consideration. Section 2B, required documents. The applicant shall submit to the commission an application consisting of the following documents. 1, a written application. I don't even know what that's replacing. I think it just said nothing. I think it just said completed in full. A written application completed in full on forms prescribed by the commission, signed by the applicant, or by a duly authorized officer or agent of the applicant. We can get to the comment on that. That's the only addition. And then all of that stuff in number 2 is struck. So the comment, and I believe this was one of the things we had specifically asked Rich to comment on. 2A through F is a lot and may be overly specific. Something along the lines of signed by a duly authorized officer or agent of an entity. It may be an attorney who isn't an officer. It may be an officer who isn't the vice president, right? So that, I believe, covers all of those in intent. Does the commission agree?
I agree.
I just have one question on that. Cindy, Cindy's joined, right?
Yes, she's in.
So Cindy, are these the subdivision applications on the internet where they can be downloaded, or can they be filled out online?
Yeah, they can be filled out online now, yes.
Well, I don't-
So,
I don't think it'd have to be stated that it can be done online.
Dave, is where you're going with that to take out the word written?
yep, exactly. Or adding written or online application, just inserting online.
Or an online application.
Exactly. And I think.
An online application.
Yeah, that's something that we should consider when we're reviewing the zoning regs, to put that in now too, because we want to get people into the habit of doing that. And the next Thompson newsletter, I will be writing instructions on that
Excellent.
for the public.
All right, so
Right.
this stuff.
All the rest here, I'm in agreement with. Just that one.
So a written or an online application.
Yep.
Yep, okay.
I have a question about, for the online, how will we know that somebody's not trying to put something through and forge, with a forged application?
What do you mean, a scam?
Yes.
You
Well,
don't.
they have to pay their fees as a
Right,
part
yeah.
of the online process.
Yeah, that's true.
So the application's not complete until they complete their payment. It would be kind of an odd scammer who would want to pay.
It
that.
just kind of just jumped out
Yeah.
at me,
I don't think Donna's had any trouble with it. She's been doing it for 2 years now, so I can ask her.
I mean, I guess the complete answer to your question is somebody could certainly start one fraudulently. But again, since the final step is to pay for something,
Plus, it's going to go through the zoning officer, or somebody's going to look at it.
Well, the zoning officer looks at it, because
Or it's gonna be us, and we
Yeah,
just
yeah.
keep the money.
Yeah.
They forfeit the money.
yeah, I mean, if somebody fills it out fraudulently And Cindy does the review, you know, because it gets automatically sort of sent to her email to review. And then it's brought before the commission. I mean, there's all kinds of steps in there
Right.
and money. At some point, if it's a hoax, there's going to be nobody replying like to Cindy's questions to schedule public hearings and stuff.
It just, I don't know, just jumped out that I'm always a devil's advocate, you know?
Yeah. No, it's always worth asking the questions. I just think it's extremely low risk that somebody would. The simple gatekeeper of the payment and the fact that it goes through so many levels of review before it becomes accepted.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, so here was that thing that we had in strikeout. For any subdivision containing one or more private streets, the applicant shall provide a document containing the proposed language for the establishment of the owners association for the maintenance and liability agreement that is proposed to be filed on the land records. And what you guys had requested that we strike, and I just had Rich look at it, is the following: and reviewed, not approved by the town's legal counsel. Any fees associated with review by town council shall be at the cost of the applicant. So as you can see in the comment thread, Rich is kind of saying, I don't know what your option is. And there are other places in the draft where you are specifically saying council will review and then we pass the fees on. So I'm suggesting we put it back in, entirely at your option, however.
I, you know, in looking at it in this context, I agree with Attorney Roberts. I mean, all it is a second level of review, and any fees associated with it shall be the cost of the applicant. I mean, it's a no lose to reinstate it, right? It just protects us. It protects us, and it's free of cost for us to be protected. So I vote we approve it, put it back in.
Do you guys want to take a vote on it because you had previously made a different decision? Might be worth having it in the record.
I would say if there's any objection, we can take a vote, but if there's no objection.
I think we should go with Richard's suggestion.
Is there any objection to restoring this language to the draft? Hearing none, I would say that is the action of the commission.
Okay. All right. Section 4B, decision number 6C2. And this was in a list, so it's not a complete sentence. So it was just a list of things required prior to the decision being made. The specific item is any any subdivision containing private streets. The final language for the owners association declaration currently you see in strikeout, such declaration being as defined by section 42-202 to 47-202. I'm sorry, 47-202 of the Connecticut General Statutes. So the initial comment from Rich was that is the correct statutory reference, but that he was uncomfortable with the reference to the statute there. I didn't understand his comment at first. So what he was really saying was just take out the statutory reference completely, as you can see in the comment thread. I thought all along he was trying to tell me to use a different set of standards to reference, and he was just saying, don't reference anything at all.
Why not?
I'm sorry, Tara, can you remind me what CIOA is?
The Common Ownership Interest Act. So that was the the statutory reference that he recommended we take out of the definition of owners association. And from an actual phone conversation I had with him, my impression was that he just thought it was too prescriptive, that there may in fact be other forms of those owners associations that come to be outside the guidelines of those statutes. And since we're asking him to review, and he's just, and our council is going to look at it to make sure it's kosher, that therefore the statutory reference was unnecessary.
And going back to our, Tira, going back to taking out, oh, let's see, that was in definitions. As an example, that condominium that was built in 1989 is not a homeowners association. It's a limited partnership. So I agree with the attorney.
So Alvin, you would agree with the strikeout as shown?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that seems to make sense to me as well, Alvin.
Right, so you're not gonna have the CIOA anywhere in there. That's what you're saying?
That is the recommendation
All right,
of
because
the
before
attorney.
you said Common Owners Interest Association, and so you have the wording wrong, the letters wrong. You have CIOA instead of COIA. But
Oh,
if you're not gonna use
yeah.
it, it's not important, right?
Indeed so.
So Tira, I'm not following totally. So Attorney Roberts at the first, he said statutory reference should be 47202, but I don't think it is appropriate to use the COI definitions for declaration or homeowners association universally. So is he recommending we use 47-202 or no?
No, he was saying if we're going to keep the statutory reference, that's the correct one.
Okay.
But he's saying, I believe, because he either feels that it's too prescriptive or because there are other mechanisms.
And I pointed that out, Dave.
Right.
That limited partnership on that condominiums
Yep.
was built in 89.
I'm sorry, I might be beating a dead horse, but 47202 is the same as COIA?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay. That wasn't,
Now,
I
you
wasn't
just
clear on that
answered
either.
my question.
So,
Isn't the goal, John Rice, isn't the goal, the commission, that if that is developed a condo, that we send it to Rich, and his primary concern would be the protection of the town? Let him review whatever that language is, regardless of what the regulations are,
Right.
you know?
yeah,
We
no,
just-
that's a good point, John. So it sounds like the consensus is to agree with Tira's and Attorney Roberts' recommendation to just strike that as we see in the draft.
I would agree, Dave Poplawski.
Yeah, yeah, just as long as we send it to the whomever that our lawyer will be to review it, protecting the town. That's it. And I agree, take it out.
Way it goes. Similarly, in the next one, in this subsection on the creation of owners associations, you'll see here currently reads, common property within a subdivision shall be owned, administered, and maintained by an owners association. You can see in the strike through pursuant to those same statutory references, I have adjusted and simplified by saying as defined in Article 2 of these regulations. So we've defined what we say an owners association is. The owners association document that you create has to fit that definition. Our council is going to review it. Therefore, the statutory reference again should be unnecessary. Agreed?
Agreed.
I agree.
All right, and here is specific language that Rich gave us for that same subsection for number 3. currently reads, the owners association shall be formed and executed during the approval process related to the subject subdivision. Then we had that list that everybody wanted to strike. We had Rich look at it, confirm that it should be struck. He did do that. And then in the second round of comments, he has provided this alternate text. The owners association shall be formed pursuant to legal agreements in form and substance acceptable to the commission, which shall, at the commission's discretion, be subject to review by the town council. If the documents establishing the owners association are found acceptable by the commission, the documents shall be filed in the office of the town clerk by the developer as part of the approved subdivision plan. Nice and tidy.
I like it.
Same here.
Just Tara, the only question, saying a subdivision plan. Is that a plan or should it be when it's filed, a Mylar is filed? Is there?
I feel like those terms are interchangeable, but
Interchangeable.
I can change it to read when the Mylars are.
Yeah, because couldn't a subdivision plan be changed or during our meetings or whatever comes up? Rather than the Mylar is the final.
I kind of agree with Mr. Rice because, things are, we're going to approve it. But I think that, the owners association is executed and reviewed before the Mylar. That makes sense because things can change from, and it could they could be approved, comes back in for a revision, it could go back and forth. So we don't want to keep sending it to the attorney for review as it continues changing. If we're specifying that it's at the approved subdivision plan. That was almost like an attorney long-winded there, but that was my point.
I'm just trying to, I don't think we find it in the, any wording to that
So here,
regard in the memo. Does anybody have the actual draft? So in
well,
front of them?
my question is the work that approved is doing in that, right? Once it's approved, it doesn't change, right?
Well, we've had people come in after an approved subdivision and look to change sidewalks from one material to another, right? So even though it's approved, there are some changes that do come through that we recognize and approve over, not the whole subdivision, but there are other approvals that take place.
But when you make those approvals, that's typically after the Mylars are filed, right? And it's and they have to file new Mylars for that. And that becomes the as-built, right?
Yes.
So that wouldn't have any effect on the owners association, right? The owners association is a legal document that has to be filed with the original Mylar, not with the as-built. The construction doesn't change I would think the construction wouldn't change the content of the owners association.
I don't think it would either, Tara.
It's just my hang up is with the word plan. I just like the
So you just want to change the word to Mylars?
yes, yeah.
Marlo. Okay, there's an echo again. Tara, did you need to look at the draft of the regulations?
No, I was just going to ask how
Okay.
how we specifically refer to the final plan. Like, do we call it the final map? Do we call it the final plan? But I think if we're calling it the Mylars, that's fine.
Okay, all right, because I have that here. If you need it in the future.
No, I think we're okay with Mylars because that's unambiguous.
Okay, I got a question on it that I've been trying to figure out. The homeowners or the owners association is made up of the people that have lots on that street. Is that correct?
As a part of the subdivision.
So when a subdivision has an owners association, the lots may not all be sold. So you got people, when can the owners association be formed? If it supposes one street and the person's building on the end of it. So is he the owners association until somebody buys the 2 or 3 lots between there and next intersection? Going back toward town, if you will?
So it's a better question, obviously, for Rich than it is for me. But let me backtrack to when I actually lived in a condo association. The documents related to the association are a part of the land record for that lot or unit or whatever. So whoever sells you that property, your agent, broker, that's a part of the legal history of, so there's no chance that you can't know that you have to buy into that association. That's why
So
you
if
need
you don't
the
like that
documents.
association, your choice is to buy a lot somewhere else. Is that it?
Correct.
Okay.
The same goes, Randy, when it's approved, the Mylars, everything, and somebody decides to move on, that owners association is a legal document attached to the land, not the person who
Yeah,
owns.
okay.
Just like if you bought a property, say it was even a single family residence property on a large lot that had a conservation easement in perpetuity to the town, that easement would be filed on your land records. You
Yeah.
couldn't do anything about it. It would be
Right.
a part of the legal history of that property.
Okay. Good enough. Moving on.
Moving on.
A case in point, Randy, remember up on 21 where they wanted to put in that big an additional subdivision? And there was
Yep.
a conservation easement and
Yeah,
that fell apart because of that.
yeah.
All right, so moving on to Article 4, requirements for the subdivision of land. I am recommending striking all of subsection D on lot size, which currently reads, any lot proposed within a subdivision shall meet the requirements of the zoning regulations for the minimum size for the district in which it is located, with the following exceptions. 1, the commission may require larger lots to provide adequate separation between and among the well, septic system components and foundation as required by the NDDH. Or 2, the commission may permit smaller lots for an approved conservation subdivision. You can see here, Rich and I went back and forth a little bit. And essentially he's saying that there is no legal way that the commission can require larger lots than you've already required. And you've already referred to the allowance to make smaller lots for conservation subdivisions, both in your zoning regulations and earlier in this section. So there is no new information in that subsection D, or at least no new legal information. So I am suggesting that that means it should be struck, but if anybody wants to discuss that further. And that's his, you can see in the highlight there on the page, that's his case law reference.
Yeah, I mean, from what I recall, I think we did go full circle, just seeing his comments, brings it to the forefront. I can remember kind of going around full circle with this. So I would agree with him. It's redundant.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to?
I agree with the attorney.
I mean, he is citing the case law. I think that's fairly clear. And away it goes. And this was another similar one under J, street design and construction, 2 existing streets. C, it currently reads, a proposed subdivision connecting to a street within the town that is not identified on the map titled Thompson, Connecticut, prepared by the Connecticut Department of Transportation in cooperation with the U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Highway Administration, accepted as of December 31st, 2020, as may be amended, shall improve said street to substantially conform to the standards for new streets as described in Appendix A to the nearest intersection with a town street. And again, I had a little back and forth with Rich on this. I was just trying to figure out, was there any leeway to require anything like the suggested level of improvement? And in the end, his simple comment back was, the extent to which any offsite improvements can be required is probably limited to the conveyance of strips of land needed to provide road right-of-way widths along the property being subdivided and improvements at the immediate intersection of a proposed subdivision road and an existing town road. So C refers specifically not to town roads, but to paper streets and private roads. So my interpretation of this, and I'm certainly open to other observations here, is that kind of makes all of C unenforceable. I can take it out of strike through to make it easier to look.
Thank you.
Do that.
I mean, I would say stronger than unenforceable, right? It seems not within our authority to even do so, which opens us up to action.
I believe that is correct, but again, if anybody else is reading anything differently here.
As I look at it, I mean, I get what he's saying, but I'm wondering if he's saying that because it's to the nearest intersection with the town street. So we're requiring more, which he brought to light, than just the intersection, which I think is what we intended. And then it just, whatever, got away from us. But I don't see how we can't have an intersection improved, but not the nearest intersection with the town street. So it would be the new subdivision connecting to a street within the town that is not identified on the map titled Thompson, Connecticut.
So an unofficial street, a non-public street.
Yeah, all right.
I think that's
Yeah.
the thing, is that it's a
That's it.
non-public street.
Yeah, how can we enforce something on a street we have not bought into and do not maintain? Yeah, I agree. Sorry.
Yeah, I had to read that a couple times myself, and obviously you can see we had multiple comments back and
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah, no, it does. I totally agree with it,
Right, there are guidelines and regulations that any non-public street intersecting with a town street would have to meet, right? Those are, I mean, like any driveway or any.
Well, so for the construction of new private streets, we have created real standards. They're in the road design appendix. And essentially it's the same as street standards, except we allow them to make them 2 feet narrower.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm speaking like specifically to the intersection itself, right? Like,
Well, that would include guidelines for intersections.
right, but like when like a driveway is built. I'm not even talking about like subdivision, right? Just a driveway, it has to.
It has to have an apron. If it's to
It
a
has to
paved
meet
street,
certain standards of visibility and whatnot, and I think that this would have to as well.
Right, thank you, Randy. That's exactly what I was trying to get to.
Right, but again, all of those standards are part of what you paid Janet to do.
Yeah,
So
Right,
that,
right, right, right,
that's
right.
in your appendix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this is talking about something different. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm, yeah, I think
You know,
strike it.
the only thing I get concerned with, and it, it came back to me clear as day, and I think, Ray was involved in that conversation too. We were talking about all of the lots down on Schoolhouse, where if someone were to cut in a driveway, a road, a subdivision, because there's all those little lots down there, there's nothing to hold the developer into standards within the intersecting of that private street. And drainage, I know that was the conversation. It was drainage. There was, we plow the private streets. Some of the private streets are plowed, some of them we take care of, or, catch basins fall in. That was the intent, and I get it that it's a private street, but I guess that's what we were trying to help with the standards for those existing private streets and those homeowners that could be affected by that new subdivision.
but isn't all of that Janet stuff, doesn't that cover any new construction like you're talking about?
I think the section that Dave's talking about, or the things that Dave's talking about, are actually in the somewhere in this subsection J, or something related to it, where there are some things described like, the town strongly prefers that all streets and subdivisions connect to an existing town street. And again, I'm not looking at the full text itself, but it's something along the lines of where the only option is to connect to an existing private street. Here are some additional considerations. The new streets must also be private, right? You can't have a public street that the only way you can get to it is across a private street.
Yep.
And I included some language for, if that the developer can offer to the residents on the existing private street a buy-in to the owners association, in which case the road, they become a part of that, not exactly of the subdivision, but of the association, and therefore that gets privately maintained under the same. And Rich didn't flag that as being inappropriate. So I think that is kosher.
Okay. Yeah. I just remember what was at least going through my mind as we were talking about this section, what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and you're right that Ray did also bring up some stuff like that, although it was more in relationship to driveways. Like, we're in this thorny dilemma where the town has, although well-meant, put itself in a pickle because they've agreed to do some minor maintenance on some private roads. It's not really appropriate. They're telling other private road residents that they're not going to do it. So we can't inadvertently create standards here where the town ends up on the hook.
Maybe I'm just getting stuck on it, but I mean, they're coming to us to approve that subdivision, and I think we should be able to make sure that the best interests of that private street are protected. But I guess if that's overstepping our bounds, as Attorney Roberts states, then.
Well, that's the owners association, right? Or the maintenance, if it's just shared driveways and not streets and major common property, then it's the maintenance and liability agreement. That's why our town council looks at those documents. Like if it comes back, if Roberts comes back and says this maintenance and liability agreement doesn't protect anybody, then you reject it and you say, no, go fix it and bring us back something acceptable. So you're doing all your protective work before the thing even gets built.
Yep. Okay.
For one thing, down on, just to bring up, on Schoolhouse Pond, they put up, the Lake Association put up private street signs. That was never private streets. And the people on the Lake Association don't even live on them private streets. They live on Jezersky Lane and Bacola Road. And I know that's a total different thing than what's going on right here, but you know, that's stuff that's gonna have to be looked into later on.
I suspect I will be a part of looking into that later. And for whatever it's worth, I think we also specifically say when creating street signs on a private street, it has to say so, right? For future. So we're trying to cover all those bases for going forward. It's always going to be a problem trying to retrofit solutions onto things that already exist.
Well, they just put them signs up last summer. You know, the Lake Association bought them private road signs and they popped them up last summer, and that was that.
The
you know.
association did it.
Right, but the association is 4 people that's been meeting now, 5 people that's been meeting at the town that don't even live on them private roads. I mean, don't even live on the dirt part of the roads. So you know, all that stuff was put on. There's 64 other houses down there that was never even asked about any of that stuff. And I know who they're talking to at the town. They're listening to them 4 people and not the other 64 that are living down there. But that's a total another
A different problem.
right. That's a total nother subject that's going to be worked out actually probably through the selectman's office.
So Tara, my last question. I think Attorney Roberts in the yellow at the bottom says, to the extent which any offsite improvements can be required is probably limited to the conveyance of strips of land needed to provide road right-of-way widths along the property being subdivided and improvements at the immediate intersection of proposed subdivision road and an existing town road. And then underneath it, it says, based on Attorney Roberts' comments above, it seems this entire, so should we not be considering a conveyance of strips of land if needed to provide?
Well, again, remember, we're talking about non-public roads here. So, and it's the conveyance is not from the town to the developer. It's, in that case, it's from the developer to the town. Right, that's the conveyance. So who's the developer going to convey that to in the case of a private?
I got you. Yeah, okay. Makes
That's
sense.
how I read that anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're gonna convey it to the town. We'd own a strip of land in between a subdivision that has has its own tenants association and a private street that we have no buy-in to. So I get it. Yep.
Are we good? Are we generally in
Yes.
agreement? Do we need
Yeah.
something more formal like a vote, or are we good with consensus?
I would say, again, is there anyone who thinks we should not, is there any objection to striking this section? Again, hearing none, I would say striking it is the will of the commission.
Okay, so this I think was actually based on comments from Ray. So in D, driveways, general provisions, all driveways, individual or shared. Item X, Roman numeral 10. Whenever a private drainage swale or private detention area is utilized in diverting driveway water from the traveled right-of-way, the owner of the subject lot or lots shall be responsible for maintaining the swale or detention area and any culverts in accordance with the approved design. To ensure proper maintenance, no certificate of occupancy or use shall be issued for the subject lot until a deed restriction approved by the commission or its agent is filed on the land records. Said deed restriction shall clearly note the maintenance responsibility, including timelines for compliance. And what I have struck here, and Ray, you can tell me if I misunderstood you, but based on our email back and forth, I think I got it. And shall allow the town, subject to proper notification, to undertake any necessary maintenance activity In such case, the town shall bill the property owner for expenses related to such maintenance, and the town may seek reimbursement of the cost of such maintenance from the property owner. And you can explain your own point, but as I understood it, those highlighted lines were the ones that you really objected to. And again, on that same principle, that if sort of our goal is that we don't want additional maintenance burden, and this is privately owned, it's inappropriate and problematic to state that, you know, we reserve right of entry. And as it says here in the highlighted stuff, the more I read about it, particularly after we were emailing back and forth, the more I came to agree with that. But this might be something worth you guys having a conversation about right now. I certainly didn't want to just delete it on my own steam.
Yes, I was more worried about something happened years down, a year or two down the road, and then the town having to go in there and fix it because there was problems with the people not agreeing to fix it. And then the hiring a lawyer and having us pay for it and then us having to get reimbursed. And I just didn't think that we should be fixing private property, that our town workers shouldn't be fixing private property, further down the road. What you took out of there is exactly what I was talking about.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure that I captured your intent. But again, I do think it's worthwhile for the other members here to just make sure that that this is the final language that you want. Is there an alternate? Is it just as simple as taking that out? There you go.
You're Alvin, I would take it out. I agree with Ray.
Just a question, John Rice, is that this swale now, is that along a town-owned road? If so, what if it's deteriorating the town road?
This
And
is-
that person that creating that, because he's not maintaining that swale, the town's eventually gonna go and fill it, fix it. And how do we get reimbursed for it? I don't know where the swale, whenever a private drainage swale or private detention area is utilized in diverting driveway water from the travel right of way. Whose right of way is it? Is it a town road?
No, it's a shared driveway.
It is the section discussing driveways.
So the way I read that, John, is that we would have to go in, if there was a drainage problem, the town would go in and fix the drainage problem on the shared driveway if there was an argument between the three people on their shared
Oh.
driveways. And then we would go and reimburse, we would chase them
Oh,
down to be
okay.
reimbursed for the money.
No, we don't want to
Yeah.
go that way.
Correct. That's why when I read that, and I read it like 4 times, I was like, boy, that just don't seem right. And, because then the taxpayers are on the hook and it could be years before we could be reimbursed.
Well, the easy thing, just don't go in. Why do we go in and fix it
Well-
on a private driveway?
If we delete all this, we wouldn't be.
Right, that's exactly Ray's point. That's exactly what he called out. So that's why I have those last 3.5 lines struck.
Well, what if it's affecting a town road though? It's overflowing and washing out a road, like Mr. Rice said. And we have to. I agree with you totally. If it's not causing any impedance to town property, roads. But, at some point, there could be something that comes in contact with a road, washes out a road, it's overflowing, it's not properly maintained, so it.
Because a private driveway eventually is gonna enter onto a town road. So I don't know, I'm with leaving it in. If they don't maintain it, we have to go and fix it. And we're never gonna get the money back unless we have it in the reg somewhere that we can do that.
So,
What
this
if we
is,
just, Tara, sorry.
so that I don't have to, zip away from the memo, if somebody who's got either a paper or a digital copy of the current draft could go to the section on drainage easements.
You know what page? You know what page, Sharon?
I don't, because I don't have it.
There,
Open.
that's right, okay. Some question. All right, give me a minute.
Because I think that there are several iterations of stuff specific to drainage, and that there may even be that language about emergency entrance.
Okay, so now I have these subjects: stormwater management, drainage to off-site properties. Is that where you want?
Maybe it would be in there somewhere. I think I'm saying I think, right? Because I'm not looking at the
Right,
the
drain, so
words.
that's, you know, 37 or 43, okay. Let's go to 37 or 43.
While Cindy's looking, I do think some of the confusion between sort of what Ray was envisioning and what John Rice was envisioning is this, you know, in that second line there, the traveled right of way. I think that language might be causing some of this confusion.
If
No,
the way I read this, if even halfway up that driveway, if that ends up getting flooded and washed out, and the three people on their driveway doesn't want to have it fixed, that they could probably hire an attorney and sue the town to fix their driveway. Is what jumps out at me.
What if-
Not
Right, which I agree, Ray, is not what we want.
that right, and that's what's jumping out at me, because you know, you get a good attorney and they read this the way it's written, halfway down the driveway could be washed out, and then we could have to go in there and fix it, and then, you know, have to go back after these people for money, and then our taxpayers are paying for work done on private land. Is what I'm trying to get away from.
What if we?
But if it's a private Ray, why do we go in and fix it?
Because it says it in this regulation that we will. It doesn't say if it's at the street where the flood is, or if it could be, you know, 2 houses up the driveway. There's no difference in between of where the washout could be on that property.
I-
So
I
maybe
think that
this
if-
is really supposed to be a public street.
Well,
And
what if
it-
we did Rich's comment? He said, I believe so, but make it optional, not mandatory, that the town fix the problem and charge the property owner. So if we made it optional and we only fix the problem if it was jeopardizing town property or a town road, we have the ability to charge them if we go in and have to fix it. Right.
okay, that,
Yeah, so if that's the case, then this may be, instead of saying a traveled right of way from a town accepted street, wherever a private drainage swale or private detention area is utilized in diverting driveway water from a town accepted street, the owner of the subject lot or lots shall be responsible for maintaining the swale or detention area and any culverts, yada, yada. To ensure proper maintenance, no certificate of occupancy or use shall be issued for the subject lot until a deed restriction approved by the commissioner or its agent is filed on the land records. Said deed restriction shall clearly note the maintenance responsibility, including timelines for compliance. So,
Yeah, so something there would have to be unstruck.
I mean, so I know to me it seems redundant, but I think it's also clear the maintenance responsibility of the lot owners. and shall allow allow.
So let's try in.
Could you say,
Mm.
Sarah, could you say, and shall allow the town at its discretion and subject to proper notification?
I'm trying to think of how I want to say that this is only if you're causing a public nuisance, right?
Correct.
So if through improper maintenance, a public nuisance results.
Now, do we have any definition of proper maintenance?
Well, that's the maintenance responsibility and the timelines for compliance. If through
With-
improper maintenance, a
I-
public nuisance results, the
Sarah, would-
owners,
Sarah,
Yeah.
with a nuisance rather than a safety, because I'd be more concerned with ambulances, fire apparatus not being able to travel that road due to improper maintenance, creating whatever, you know?
Well, that's understood.
Well, it is, yeah. If it's understood, other than the property owners don't see it as a problem. You know, one guy says, hey, that is not a problem to me. I drive over that all the time. The road is washing away. Who cares?
But that's why we should define what proper maintenance for driveway.
Well, I think when they submit that plan, they're gonna give you a plan, what the maintenance is and the frequency of how to clean it and maintain that. That's what it says there, doesn't it? To maintaining, that'll be the responsibility, maintaining the swale detention area, the culverts, da, 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 da. They're gonna give us a timeline, how often they have to clean that.
okay, I'm just gonna say that this is what I think I'm hearing. It does move it away from where Ray's objections were, although I think it's better than it was in the strikeout. So let's read it again through. Wherever a
Can I
private,
just make this, before
Yeah,
you
go
do
ahead.
that,
go ahead.
could you put unsafe public conditions? Does that make sense? Just a thought. Because that's what you're concerned about. Is, no, you put unsafe, conditions for the public, okay. Is that good?
Well, let's find
Everything.
out. Let's read it through and
Okay,
see how it
okay.
makes sense to everyone. Whenever a private drainage swale or private detention area is utilized in diverting driveway water from a town accepted street, the owner of the subject lot or lots shall be responsible for maintaining the swale or detention area and any culverts in accordance with the approved design. To ensure proper maintenance, no certificate of occupancy or use shall be issued for the subject lot until a deed restriction approved by the commission or its agent is filed on the land records. Said deed restriction shall clearly note the maintenance responsibility of the owner or owners, including timelines for compliance. If through improper maintenance, unsafe conditions for the public are created in the town accepted street, then the owners shall allow the town, subject to proper notification, to undertake any necessary maintenance activity. In such case, the town shall bill the property owner for expenses related to such maintenance.
You should put own- you
In which
should put
case I would
owner.
strike this last.
You should put owner and parentheses owners.
I would just put this in strike through. So it does get back into that notion that there may be occasions in which the town is forced to undertake this maintenance burden. But if
But
it's,
the
go ahead.
way it's written, it's the maintenance burden is not on the driveway, it's to fix the public way. Not the way you have it written now is much better because it's saying that it'll fix the public way and then go after the owners to fix the public way and not the driveway. Before it was like we were gonna fix their driveways.
So,
Right.
you feel like this keeping this language in as written now resolves your concern?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, and John, do you still feel that your concern is protected as well?
Yes.
I think this is a really good piece of work right here. I think this makes a lot of sense.
Can I go back to something? I know you're almost finished with this, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the no certificate of occupancy use shall be issued for the subject lot. And the way all that works is I sign off on the building permit, I sign off on the zoning permit. And when it's ready for its CO, generally, especially in a subdivision, I will be called to sign off on the CO. But other COs just sort of pile up. So I'm just seeing how that's gonna work. I guess it will work.
Well, Cindy, is there is there something like, so you just said like the zoning, right, is there another break in there that makes more sense to you than the CO?
No, because the CO is the final thing. No, yeah, I think it's gonna be okay because like I said, the building office really pays attention to the lots and subdivisions to make sure I sign off on the CO. So, okay, no, we're good. I'm good.
Tira, just one tiny nitpicky thing. In the fourth, right near the end of the fourth line,
Yep.
where the subject lot, I think it just needs subject lots. Thanks.
Well, no, you
and-
only do a certificate of occupancy for one lot at a time. You're not doing it you're doing it when that lot is being developed. You only sign a certificate of occupancy because you got a building permit to develop the lot. Interesting. Maybe that's where my confusion is. Are we talking about lot or lot? Because your certificate of occupancy is for the individual
For
owner.
one lot.
of
Yeah,
that
I get you,
lot.
Cindy. So yeah, if you don't think that,
Yeah,
I think in general, in the construction, although we do often use the, singular and plural, at least in the zoning regulations, and I'm not sure that we carried this over into the subdivision regulations, we specifically say construction in the singular means the plural and the plural means unless clearly indicated otherwise.
well, but this can't, Tara, because you're writing a certificate of occupancy for one lot that is building a residential unit. You're not writing off a certificate of occupancy for all the lots in the subdivision. Am I
We can-
making myself
yeah,
clear?
no, you are, yeah,
I can make it the singular again, that's fine.
yeah. It is a good point. That
Yeah, but making it singular is not going to,
a
you can't
CO is
interpret it
just
as
for one
plural.
lot. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, I think this is good then. Is there any further comment on this bit? Good. Awesome. Thank you.
What is this now? Oh, this is just another one where it was the subject to review by town council. Right, it was another place where it was struck, so and I restored it here, so I just was calling attention to that. I think we can move on from that one. Let's see. This was just a question that Rich had, so I'm just, again, calling your attention to it because it's something that we discussed and he hadn't been a privy to, so It was a slight change in the language at one point. At one point, it said limits on the number of lots sharing a driveway are not imposed for business or commercial subdivisions or for mixed use subdivisions. I think it was Janet who called out that if you have one mixed use building, then it can like set all of your desired limits on shared drives for residences askew. So I adjusted the language to read as you see. Limits on the number of lots sharing a driveway are not imposed for business or commercial subdivisions or for lots designated for business or commercial uses in mixed use subdivisions. Rich was just wondering on the reasoning there. So I just filled him in on what we discussed, you know, that you want to have fewer curb cuts and that for business uses, it's much less contentious than residential uses. So that was that. All right, section 3, stormwater management and low impact development. Number 12, stormwater detention structures. And this was essentially a back of house back and forth between me, Rich, and Marla's comments. The highlighted section, so I'll read the whole thing. Wherever practicable, stormwater detention structures shall be designed as surface structures. Whether designed as surface or subsurface structures, they shall be designed as an integral part of the stormwater treatment system, as well as limiting peak discharge from the storm drainage system of the developed area, where such discharge would adversely affect receiving streams and or storm systems. The developer shall be responsible for establishing short and long-term maintenance of detention structures and appurtenances. Here's the highlighted section. In the event that the owner of the property fails to maintain such areas in reasonable order and safe condition, the commission may serve written notice. So here's one of those sections we were just talking about. The commission may serve written notice to such individual or association, setting forth the nature of the maintenance deficiency and requiring its correction within 30 days, after which time, if the deficiency remains, the town may assume maintenance to avoid the creation or promulgation of a public nuisance, and shall assess the owner or owners of such property for town expenses incurred in the form of a lien on the property. So Marla had specifically asked to check with the attorney to see if that was legal. And after a little back and forth, Rich's final comment was, the original comment was meant to respond to Marla by saying that this right could exist, and if you want that right, it should be reflected either in the individual deeds or in a declaration of covenants applicable to the entire subdivision. Responding to my question, how does this language need to be adjusted? He said it doesn't. So I take him at his word. If anybody wants to make any adjustments here, though, call it out now.
It's good enough for Rich, it's good enough for me.
I will generally tend to agree. Okay, moving on. And this again was just a little sort of slow motion conversation between Marla, Rich, and me in independent comments. The size and location of all detention structures shall be within the ability of the town to appropriately maintain, repair, or modify as determined by the commission in consultation with the Director of Public Works. Maintenance roads and easements shall be provided for all detention facilities as provided in Article 4, Section 312A above, which I believe is what that was that we just looked at. And I added that to refer back to that. The road shall be a minimum of 15 feet wide, capable of providing access for maintenance and emergency vehicles. Grade shall not exceed 10%. And, you know, even for private roads. Marla questions as to whether the town would have the ability to make an owners association maintain their structures, and subsection A, which is the one that we just looked at, provides the mechanism. So again, I think that that resolves the entire thread, but if anybody disagrees, we can look at it.
Sense to me.
I think again, the town is, you know, that was our intent through this whole process, was to make sure the town was covered in all aspects, which I'm happy to see that we were, even when, you know, Marla questioned it. So I think we did a great job.
Okay, so here's another sort of three-way, one-way conversation. Currently, E under the drainage section, it says easements and rights to drain. It looks like that rights to drain is just unnecessarily opaque language. So I changed the title of that subsection E just to drainage easements, and instead of right to drain, now refers to drainage easements to private properties. So whereas before it read under number 4, right to drain, where downstream drainage features are not adequate to handle the increase in flows, the applicant shall secure drainage rights in writing from the affected property owners. Such rights shall be noted on the final plans and shall be secured prior to final approval. Rights to drain shall include the right for the town to enter and maintain existing and proposed blah, blah, blah. If the drainage system is to be dedicated to the town, it shall be in a form satisfactory to the town. Marla's comment was, what is this word salad? Essentially. And after a little bit, this is what I realized it meant, that this just means drainage easements to private properties and how are those noted and secured. So how it reads now, and I'm just gonna, where downstream drainage features are not adequate to handle the increase in flows, the applicant shall secure drainage easements in writing from all affected property owners. Such easements shall be secured prior to final approval and noted on the final plans. And that's all it says.
I like
Here, the only thing I question is that an easement is only as good as it is. It's, I know in Massachusetts, it's not valid unless it's filed. So you can have an easement in writing, but unless it's filed, not on the final plans though, it has to be filed on the deeds. And I'll give you an example. So an easement, if you have an over a driveway easement, it has to, just because it's written doesn't grant you permission to use it. It has to be filed on the deed and then it's actioned, so.
Is everybody otherwise happy with
Yeah, thank
that
you, Dave.
construction? Okay, section 4, erosion and sediment control. This was just a small adjustment for better clarity. Under C, E&S plan certification and compliance. Currently reads, upon receipt of the complete E&S plan, the ZEO will review it for compliance with these regulations. And then sentence 2, at the discretion of the ZEO. Oh, apparently I changed some other things in there. Essentially, this just makes it clear that if the ZEO needs help from somebody else, she has the authority to get it at her discretion. And as you see in Rich's comment, that technically speaking, the zoning regulations and the subdivision regulations are not necessarily enforced by the zoning enforcement officer, even though in practice that's what it is. That's how we do it. So it just allows for expertise. I think that's clearer, but if anybody thinks it needs to be something else, we can take care of that now.
think it's clearer.
All right, this one was another very minor language point under D, enforcement. In the event of an unforeseen emergency in which adjacent properties, roadways, wetlands, or watercourses in the town of Thompson face imminent danger of pollution or obstruction from erosion and or sedimentation, and the permittee or his designated agent cannot be contacted through reasonable effort, previously said the commission shall empower its director of public works to act. Rich points out that the director of public works does not take orders from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
It's the director of public work isn't ours.
No, no, indeed, he is not. So I just said the town shall act, right? It's not really important who is commanding whom here. It's saying that the town will take action if you don't take care of your stuff and you create an emergency.
Tara, you want to look at that sentence, the town shall act to STEM. I think you got, yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so under section 5, open space, D, open space standards, 7, establishment of ownership and maintenance. And this is a list, so the language is weird. Rich pulled out that language that's currently struck out. And this isn't related to the everything that you must do in order to establish the ownership and maintenance. Shall comply with the Connecticut Common Interest. So it's that same statutory reference that he didn't like throughout. It's also way down in the order. It's in E. So, and he said to use the definition that we've now accepted on page 1 as the suggestion. So now the simple thing is it shall, as letter A now, first in the order, conform to the definition of an owners association in Article 2 of these regulations. So in order to create the owners association documents, it must conform with the definition of an owners association.
Keep it simple.
Simple, simple. Okay. Bonding for improvements. Take a look at this. Under that pledge of savings account B, that is an addition by Rich to the end of that statement. Pledge of savings account, which is a financial, and these are acceptable forms. Pledge of savings account, which is a financial guarantee in the form of a secured passbook savings account that shall include, among other things, at B, a letter from the bank acknowledging that the account has been assigned to the town for a period established for the construction or installation of the improvements plus 1 year, and that no withdrawal from such account may be made without the signature of an authorized official of the town. That's added by Rich. Under 4, in the commission's sole and absolute discretion, a surety bond in a form satisfactory to the commission and subject to review and approval by the finance director of the town of Thompson. And that's just, again, a little bit for clarity there. Yep.
So why are we putting such a strong statement in the beginning in the commissioner's sole and absolute discretion? Why are you saying that? I mean,
So that's in Rich's comments.
But you should make, yeah, but that's not the way we did our amendment recently, you know, a couple of years ago for a surety bond. I just don't understand why that has to be, but okay. It's up to you guys.
It seems like Rich's comment is that it protects us. It gives us, it makes it clear that we're calling the shots on whether or not a surety bond is acceptable.
Well, his comment is it makes it clear that we're not obligated to accept a surety bond.
Yeah, but a few years ago, you amended the subdivision regulations to accept surety bond.
Yeah, we may. It doesn't say we have to.
Okay.
If we could
Yeah, I
have
don't
a
have-
reason we don't want to accept the surety bond, we want a bank
Okay.
passport.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to envision an occasion where you wouldn't take one, but maybe there is such an occasion.
Okay.
Okay, so under computation of costs. And I think this is just an added statement at the end, based on actually a Marla question. So prior to the approval of any subdivision or re-subdivision plan and before the filing of the approved plan or proceeding with any work, the developer shall review the scope of the road or roads, public utilities and services to be completed to fulfill the conditions of the plan hereinafter referred to collectively as improvements with the commission. That's previously where it stopped. So Marla's comment was that nowhere did it say that estimated costs are a part of the process that the developer has to go through. So I've just added that. Based on this review, an estimate of construction costs will be created for review by the commission. So that adds that provision that yes, in fact, the developer does provide you with an estimate of costs. And then we get into a couple of related ones here. Number 4 under, well, this has to be under release. Well, maybe it is under computations of costs. Yeah, it is under computations of cost. Number 4, building permits and associated certificates of occupancy or use for buildings within the subdivision shall be released on a case-by-case basis based on whether certain required public improvements such as binder courses and drainage systems have been completed to an acceptable extent. Any such partial improvements must be approved by the commission following inspection and approval by the Director of Public Works. This partial acceptance would not relinquish responsibilities implied by these regulations. Currently, it also says, nor does it reduce the bond. The bond remains in effect until all required improvements are completed. Rich called out that, in fact, that's not legal. That according to statutes, and you can see as amended in 2012 and 2013, the bond must be released as work is done upon request. So I struck that in there and I adjusted the language in partial releases. Currently reads, when and if the commission determines that a substantial portion of the improvements called for in the final plan approved by the commission has been completed, it may recommend one or more partial releases of the financial guarantee. And Rich again commented, that's not how it works. As they are, as the developer completes, you have to release parts of the bond. So the change that I've made now is that partial releases reads, as partial improvements are completed by the developer and approved by the commission shall authorize the release of any portion of the bond to cover such partial improvements in accordance with the requirements of Connecticut General Statutes 8-25D2. The balance of the security always shall be sufficient to guarantee completion of all the remaining improvements. All right, let me take a look at this quickly. Oh, yeah, I think this was just separating these two thoughts. I think they were previously one big paragraph that didn't flow very well. Because it was all lumped in when the plans were it's the same as the as-built, and also when they weren't the same as the as-built. So it was kind of confusing. So just to be clear, under F, release of financial guarantee, number 3, the developer shall certify to the commission through submission of detailed as-built plans signed and sealed by the engineer and or land surveyor and the as-built certification form in Appendix G that the improvements are in accordance with the construction plans of the subdivision or re-subdivision. If there is no difference between the approved subdivision plans and the as-built plans, the developer's land surveyor and or engineer may update, sign, and seal the Mylars of the approved subdivision plan. And now 4, when the completed subdivision differs from the approved subdivision plan, the developer shall present as-built plans meeting the standards of Article 3, Section 3A through D of these regulations, showing all subdivision improvements as constructed also showing clearly where the as-built plans differ from the approved subdivision plans.
That seems clear to me. Yeah.
You have 2 periods after plans up there.
Not anymore. Okay, Dave, you're up here because I think everybody was vaguely confused by this when we talked about it last time. And the comments I got back from Rich were somewhat sparse. So I had highlighted, because we kept going around and round, that number 5, a warranty deed for new town accepted streets and street stubs. Also, road frontage along existing town roads where no street line had been established shall have been executed and delivered to the selectmen with a copy to the commission. Title to said roads shall be unencumbered. I essentially just said, Rich, can you look at this and make sure it's okay? And he said, yes, it does, but with no further context. So then I sent that back to Dave and Brian to make sure that I wasn't missing something in what I was asking Rich to review. And Brian sent me back this alternate language, which is a warranty deed shall have been executed and delivered to the selectmen with a copy to the commission. Titles to new town accepted streets and street stubs and any road frontage along existing town roads where no street line had been established shall be unencumbered.
Yeah, I like the way Brian worded that. That's why I didn't.
You like that better? Okay, that I
Yeah.
was unclear. So we're gonna replace this with this. Somewhat redundant to do this, but at least it'll all be in one. Oops. Okay. I think we're almost at the end. Maintenance bonding. Marla had some questions. What type of financial guarantees are acceptable for maintenance bonding? Oh, and then Rich was commenting on what we had done as well with the April 30th of the year, not, so he's just calling out, you can't do that. So now instead of all that language about April 30th and the example of how you calculate it, so now it just says, following the release of the performance bond or portion thereof, or town acceptance of the improvements, a maintenance bond equal to 25% of the cost of improvements accepted by the town shall be held for 1 full year following said acceptance in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes 8-25 D1. The purpose of the maintenance bond is to protect, the town against defective workmanship, materials, or design of improvements following completion. The same types of financial guarantee acceptable for bonding for improvements shall also be acceptable for maintenance bonding. Good?
Good.
Okay.
Yep, good.
Again, this was based on a comment Marla had that I think we actually didn't go over together because it was just a little language thing. So you'll see just at the end of D under maintenance bonding, she thought it was unclear if we were billing the developer, why do we have a bond? And it seemed to me that the intent here was if the cost overrun the amount of the bond. So resulting, the developer shall repair all defects in construction or operation during the period covered by the maintenance bond. The developer's failure to perform needed repairs within a reasonable time when so requested by the commission, as advised by the Director of Public Works, may result in the town undertaking such repairs and billing the developer for any associated costs in excess of the posted bond. And then, oh, I see, these are even blank pages. And then if you want, we can look at the easement and bond agreement forms, but the comments back from Rich on those were incredibly minor. But it's up to you if you want to look at them. Otherwise, you're done with
Good.
this.
So Tira, how long do you need to get this into a clean document?
I'll do it tomorrow. So if you, so I think your next item on the agenda is to vote to accept for public hearing.
Correct.
So I would suggest that somebody make the motion to accept the changes proposed in this memo. And then that, this wording isn't exactly right, so
Right.
give me a hand here.
Yeah, so I would move to accept the amendments that have been made to the proposed subdivision regulations.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Mr.
But these
Cody.
aren't amendments. These are
Edits.
collection of changes. They're not amendments, because you haven't voted on the original packet.
Okay, I will reword my motion to
Okay.
accept the changes made to the proposed subdivision regulations. Alvin, do you second as?
I will second that as amended.
Alright, so the motion being to accept the changes made in this meeting to the proposed subdivision regulations. Is there any discussion on the motion?
And Joe, do we have to move that to act something at our next meeting to keep this moving forward?
Well, so that would be the next step, right? The first thing would be to finalize this.
Accept the changes, okay. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
all right.
Any further discussion? Tira, can you stop sharing just so I can see who's here again?
Oh, yeah.
Hearing no further discussion, a yes vote will accept the changes. A no vote will not accept the changes. Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Paplowski, yes.
Mr. Hill. Alvin.
Alvin Hill, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Ms. Salsi.
Jane Salsi, yes.
Mr. Rice.
John Rice, yes.
With that done.
You too, Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, Joseph Brown. Yeah. Thank you. I would move the acceptance of application 23-11 for public hearing at the next regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 24th at 7 p.m.
I'll
Let me
second
check
that.
the date. Wait, let me check the dates, guys. Okay, so we get the legal notice out, the 14th and the 21st. Okay,
So that works. For now.
yes, we'll do that tomorrow.
Brilliant. So the motion has been made by Mr. Brody Brown, seconded by Ms. Salsi. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, a yes will accept the public hearing. A no will accept the application. Mr. Blackmer.
Randy Blackmer, yes.
Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Paplowski, yes.
Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill, yes. Along with the
Mr. Williams. Ms. Salsi.
Jane Salsi, yes.
Mr. Rice.
John Rice, yes.
Joseph Brody Brown, yes. So the motion is adopted, it's passed, the application is accepted. And Tira, you will open it for public comment.
I will get it on the website tomorrow.
Perfect, through the public hearing.
Yep.
Excellent. With that, although it's not on the agenda, I move to item 5 and move to adjourn.
I second.
Seconded by Ms. Smelcy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned at 40 p.m.
Happy Easter, everyone. Have a great
Happy Easter.
weekend.
Happy
Dave, have
Easter.
fun.